A special note to listeners for today's episode. This episode contains stronger than normal references to suicide and suicidal ideation. Please exercise extreme caution when listening.
I saw a note that just says they had no fucking plan. I am done fearing for these silly children. I have moved on.
Is that my note or is that you?
That was you. Yeah.
In 1996, Scholastic began publishing Animorphs. Over the next 6 years, Catherine Applegate and her husband, Michael Grant, under the pseudonym K.A. Applegate, produced 54 main series books, series spin-offs, and inspired a TV series, graphic novels, and a cult following. We can't tell you where we live. We can't even tell you our last names. But we can tell you our thoughts and feelings on the series, book by book. I'm Miranda.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Eddie.
And we are the
Anidorks.
These may be kids' books, but we discuss dark themes and mature content. There may also be some explicit language. Listener discretion is advised.
So, Tobias freaks out because he sees...
Because he's selfish and has to make everything about him.
I mean, Marco did stare at him and use him as motivation of how not to get trapped in a morgue.
Yeah, he's like, I'm just gonna stare at you for a few minutes.
Yeah, there's actually a note from Chris here that just says, Marco hate stare, so bizarre.
I think the hate stare made me uncomfortable. It didn't feel right. It felt violating to me. It was like...
I've been wondering about the thought speech. Like, you have to be very purposeful with who you're broadcasting to, right? With the
Yes.
thoughts. So Marco's not accidentally muttering to himself about Tobias and broadcasting that too.
Tobias just hears in his head, God, yeah, I gotta look at him so I don't end up a freak.
That's what Tobias gonna like go through like some processing of this for like a few chapters after this.
Yeah, he's like really feeling distant from the group, and he's really like splintering off and spiraling very negatively.
Yeah. Tobias goes to Jake's house.
Because as was discussed earlier in the book, Tobias has been kind of hanging out in Jake's attic. They sort of hint at it because Jake's like, I'm gonna leave you some food in the attic. So that's where Tobias is going. There's this moment that they describe like a little bed that Jake has made for Tobias in a drawer with an old blanket, and I don't know why, but that's like something about the idea of opening a drawer and having there be a tiny bed inside is like...
It's pretty horrifying, yeah.
So Tobias, he's kind of reflecting on his friendship with Jake and how Jake used to protect him from the jerks at school who liked to beat him up. And he says, the old days, when I still went to school, how long has it been? A few weeks? A month? Not even. Tobias adjusted to this new way of life and like really mentally distanced himself from before quite a bit if he's referring to those days as the old days when actually he seems so distant from even like his memory of what he looked like. But it has not been that long at all.
He could just be angsty.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's definitely angsty.
Like when I was 13, it'd be like someone didn't talk to me for like 2 days, and I'd be like, back when we were friends. Like,
that's a great point.
That's the vibe I get from it too, but it is like shocking. It's like, it's only been a month, dude. Like,
but you're so right that a month, like summer vacation, which was like what, 2.5 months, seems like an eternity when you're a teenager. So
at the beginning of every summer, I was like, I'll just not go back. Like I never. That it's 2.5 months in the future. I'm never going back to
nobody's
school.
Gonna be able to stop me by then.
I'll be 40 by then.
So Jake puts out food for Tobias, and then Tobias really wrestles with eating He can't eat vegetables, right?
Yeah, he hasn't told Jake yet that he's a meatitarian.
Well, but like, it's just like, how do you not know?
Yeah, that birds only eat meat, right.
Hawks specifically only eat meat.
Uh-huh.
He complains about the meat being cold and dead because inside his hawk heart, like his hawk's body, wants not just living prey, but to catch the living prey and like rend its flesh.
He says, I wanted live meat. I wanted living, breathing, scurrying prey. He wants it to scurry.
And Jake isn't home to pull it around on a string for him.
The good old days.
Which we know he has string to pull around, though.
Yeah, from his old
exactly
birthday.
where it is, yeah.
He also, the drawer isn't good enough for it's not that it's not good enough.
It's too soft. It's too
It's
nice.
too soft, yeah. Yeah.
He flies into the night for a bit. He does some bird watching.
Some birding. The night belongs to other hunters, but I wasn't ready to rest.
He says he doesn't consciously go anywhere, but he knows in his heart that he's got a destination in mind. And he ends up at Rachel's house, where she's installed a little birdhouse next to her window for him to land on.
Pretty cool. Pretty choice.
He's too big for a birdhouse. I feel like birdhouses aren't for landing on, they're for inhabiting.
Well,
Being in.
For him to, he can't get inside it probably because it's like a regular birdhouse. But if she was like, Mom, Dad, can I get a weirdly big birdhouse? Like big enough for like a bird of prey. I would like hawks to nest by my window. I don't think they'd encourage that.
Do hawks eat other birds? Should this just be called a bird feeder?
You're saying that if a family of birds did decide to make their home in the bird house, though, Tobias could just devour the birds?
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, this could be a lot more useful than Jake's setup.
Yeah, like, you know, he likes it when it scurries, you know? Like, I don't know.
I like it when it scurries. That's his future bumper sticker. Rachel is happy. He knocks. What does he do? He rustles
his wing, which Chris has written in the notes. I like that Chris is not looking at their notes from the Kindle edition. It just says, bird you up. And it's on page 69. Just want to throw that out there.
Chris wrote, fuzzy slippers take the edge off.
Yeah, Rachel comes out and she's in fuzzy slippers and a bathrobe. Like she's some sort of 1960s TV mom. Like,
why are the fuzzy slippers a detail? What is that? Like,
when Tobias comes inside, he briefly looks in the mirror and realizes that hawk is like him. And Chris responds to the note that says looks in mirror, and it just says Sag.
Because it is sad. It was sad. He's feeling sad.
I would also say, if it were not for the fact that Tobias is a hawk in this scene and hasn't seen himself in a long time, I don't think I would forgive the very, like, first time in a creative writing class, how do I describe my main character? Oh, I know I'll have them look in a mirror.
Yeah, just to narrate to themselves what they like. Yeah, so we get a Tobias description,
yeah, it
a
is
hawk
sad.
description.
He doesn't know what a hawk looks like. He simply is hawk.
I will say, I was driving up to work the other day and a red-tailed hawk was standing in front of a bank near where I work. And there's this moment when you see a hawk sort of walking. I think they look like they're wearing pants.
They do.
And I think it's really, really funny.
They really do look like they're wearing pants.
So Tobias goes to have a heart-to-heart with Rachel about how, you know, he's not really sure who he is anymore, and he says he thinks he's losing himself. Rachel sort of tries to downplay it. We get this little note here from Tobias that Hawkeye's miss nothing, so he sees the way that she's trying to hide her emotions, and that makes this conversation like really difficult for both of them in a way, because I think Rachel does know that Tobias can tell when she's fudging things, but that it's more important to her to say them because she does mean them even if she's fudging them. And so she wants him to hear her say it even if he doesn't fully believe her.
Because he's really wrestling with, am I a red-tailed hawk or am I a human? And she's firmly in the camp, Tobias, you're a human. And I think Tobias is feeling maybe not more like a hawk, more like an animal right now, but like definitely more like, I'm kind of both. I think it's hard to have Rachel telling him, like, you're fully human even if you're trapped in the body.
Yeah, because she's obviously not experiencing the same problems that he is. So it doesn't come from a fully reliable source, but I think it does. She gets some really good lines in here about what it means to be human.
Yeah, there's one part where Rachel says, because what counts is in your head and in your heart. She said with sudden passion, a person isn't his body. A person isn't what's on the outside, which I think these books make a really good case for, except in the case of the Taxxons. Like
just the evil Taxxons.
Yeah. Now I'm holding out for the one good Taxxon that we meet, because I feel like...
I hope so. Yeah, we don't know, because, the person who said that was Prince Elfangor, and he could have been horribly biased. We have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, we are taking everything at his word about all of these creatures.
He could be like elves in D&D and be a horribly problematic creature.
Yeah.
The name suggests that. Like, Prince Elfangor, I feel like that's... The Andalites are the elves.
He's got hidden fangs, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, or a tail that could do some damage.
So Tobias is losing his concept of himself, and he admits to Rachel after she gives him a speech about how a person is what's on the inside, and that means he's still human, that he doesn't actually remember what he looks like, what he looked like.
Yeah.
And it makes Rachel almost cry, and that really bothers Tobias because he doesn't think of Rachel as a person who cries.
Who has a soul.
And then Rachel reveals that she has a little picture that has Tobias in it. We don't get a great description of the picture.
Except that it's not a great picture.
Right. But, like, what was this from? Is it, like, his school picture? Did she, like, cut it out of her yearbook?
I think that's a safe bet. I like imagining that it's, like, a Polaroid from across the street.
Yeah.
I wondered if maybe it was a picture of the group, but the group wasn't together terribly long before Tobias became a
Oh my
hawk.
god, what if like they were part of some club, and you know how they did at the end of the year, they're like most likely to succeed, most likely to do this, and then there's just a picture of the 5 of them, and it's like most likely to be able to transform into animals and save the world. Most likely to ride those hot thermals.
Oh, yeah.
I am really interested because I don't think there was much interaction with between Rachel and Tobias before they got their powers.
Not that we're told about.
Because Rachel seems like she's a popular kid, and Tobias is on the other end of like the social spectrum in their school. For Rachel to have a photo of Tobias where Tobias isn't following up with questions like, "Who gave you this photo? When did you take this photo?" I feel like it must be a school picture.
And we do know that Rachel keeps pictures because she had a picture of Melissa Chapman. So, like, she definitely keeps pictures. And, like, back in the 90s, that was, I feel like, a bigger thing. Another little note, after she says it's not a great picture, she says, "In real life, you look better." And Tobias just sort of echoes that statement. He says, "In real life." And I think that's a really weird choice of phrase, like, in real life, as though this wasn't real life.
What do you mean, Miranda? Because I feel like IRL is how we would describe the difference between a picture and seeing it IRL. Like, I think that is where the culture has landed.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess that is what she's saying. But I feel like it has deeper meaning for Tobias.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Like, when he echoes it. Because it almost, to me, the vibe I got from Tobias was that he felt like she was referring to his human form as real life and his hawk form as not real life.
Me too. Yeah, that's exactly how I read it. Yeah. Like, she's still expecting Tobias to turn into a human again. And that'll be real life. He'll go back to real life, whereas right now he's not in real life. That's how I read it.
And she follows it up by saying she thinks that, like, the Andalites must have some way to put him back. So, since we're all waiting on the Andalites to return, clearly when they will, and when they do, like, that they'll have this way to put him back.
Do we have a timeline on that? Is there, like, a clock that these guys, like...
I wish.
No, I think they're just waiting for... I think Elfangor said the Andalites' backup troops were on their way.
Yeah.
The scale of the Yeerk project and the Andalite army, like the Andalite civilization, it's all very vague right now. Like, we're even going to get this water truck, this like invisible truck that this whole book centers around. Like, they don't know if there's one of those, and that's the entire water for the
that's a
Yeerks
good point.
here, or if there are 12 and they're all over the planet. Which
Yeah.
I think it has to be.
12
I agree.
specifically?
Yeah, no, I think more than
Calling
5.
it now. There's 12.
Well, there's 12.
What was that code? 8125? The 1 2? That's
So Rachel says, Tobias, someday the Andalites will return. If they don't, we're all lost. All the human race. If they do come back, I know they'll have some way to return you to your body. And Tobias says that he hopes so, that he wishes he was sure of that. And she says that she's sure. And I agree. I think, Miranda, this is what I think you were saying before. I feel like Rachel does believe that at that moment, but because her eyes she starts to like tear up. And Tobias interprets that as her lying for his sake. But
Yeah.
I don't feel like it's that simple.
Yeah, I think these Hawkeyes really aren't seeing everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a more nuanced emotion than he's giving it credit for. It's not that she doesn't believe it. It's that the idea of how long it might take is what's like really, she really believes that one day it will happen, but she has no way of being able to tell him when that will be. And I think that's like
Right,
crushing.
and in the meantime, Tobias is suffering. And, like, how do you reassure someone who, like, just because you're certain something will get better doesn't mean you knowing that will make it easier
Right.
for the person you're caring for at all.
Yeah. I feel like Jake has thought a lot about how much Tobias is struggling right now. And, like, obviously Rachel has. I feel like Cassie, it's safe to assume that she seems like the most empathetic, maybe, of the group.
Yeah.
But Cassie and Marco, do you think that they're, like, tuned in to, like, what Tobias is going through in this book?
We don't get a great picture of it. I feel like Cassie doesn't get a lot of action at all in this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Marco mostly seems to be sort of pitted against Tobias in this book, as he has been in the past as well.
It's frustrating, too, because I feel like Marco isn't written as being as much of an obstacle in this book, but they still just treat him like that, which is, like, kind of frustrating.
He makes a lot of jokes about that Tobias seems to appreciate. Like, Tobias seems to appreciate Marco's teasing.
Because he's treating him like he's normal.
Yeah,
It's it's the kind of thing he'd say to him as a human, just about being a hawk. So
Yeah.
it's, in a way, Marco is the one who is treating him the closest to how he treated him when he was a human.
Yeah. So Tobias leaves. We don't see him leave, but it cuts to the next day, right?
Yeah, he says he spent the night in Jake's drawer.
Yeah.
Just in his cute little pocket bed.
It seems very cute to me.
Just tuck him in, give him a little kiss on the beak.
Just like how much thought Jake's put into like making this little home for Tobias in his attic. It feels like very sweet.
But he hasn't grasped that he's not just a small human who can fly.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
He's like,
yeah,
I'm making a home for the gnome who visits me.
Yeah.
He tried to go look up hawks at the school library, but they just didn't have much in the card catalog.
Cassie already had all the books out, actually. She's had them out for months.
Yeah. They have another team meeting that Tobias is like killing time before. And he's thinking about things that he misses from when he was a human, like showers. I think this is not the first time he's mentioned the things that he misses.
Yeah, but he mentions how, like, it's the normal things you miss and things you didn't think you'd miss at all.
We kind of get a sense of where everyone lives in relation to each other here.
Right, he, like, watches everyone go to this meeting.
So we know Marco lives in some apartments on the other side of the boulevard. It really doesn't sound like that big of a city or town from this description. And Jake and Rachel take the bus, and Cassie has to travel the furthest out to the farm, which was about a mile from the others.
A mile is really not far.
It's really small.
Yeah, and then Tobias, because he doesn't want them to know that he's just wasting time until they all get there, he's purposely late to the meeting.
Fashionably late.
Right, he's like, I had bird stuff to do. We can't all just make time out of our day for this.
Marco makes a joke about the owl that Cassie has to care for back at her barn, like being a friend of Tobias's. Which I feel like they're kind of setting up that they're going to turn into owls in the future book.
Maybe.
That's
how
always
it's
what I
happened. Yeah, that's historically speaking. Oh, and then Rachel says she has to get out of this meeting quickly because she has some sort of gymnastics exhibition at the mall.
And Marco really wants to go because he's a creep.
Yeah,
I'm
Rachel's
looking at
just
the
like shy about it and doesn't want people to come.
This is also where they come up with their big plan for the rest of the book,
Yeah.
right? They're going to uncloak the... What are we calling it? The air
They call
air
it a truck ship.
Truck ship,
At
yeah.
some point. I don't know if they're calling it that yet. But that's what... Because they're planning... They're like, could we blow it up? Could we do this? And Marco's like, look, what if we just uncloak it.
Yeah. This is about as far as they will get for planning for this mission,
Yeah.
which is
Well, then Jake has one more idea. All right.
Yes,
he's
you're
got
right.
he's got one more big thing. He's like, we've got it. We got to uncloak the ship. And Marco says, I hate to ask this, but how do you think you're going to do that? Jake's answer is they're going to get inside the ship. And he asks Marco, want to know how? And Marco says, not really. And Jake says, through the water pipes, as fish. And Marco sighs and says, Jake, I just told you I didn't want to know.
Chris makes the great point in Chris's notes. Wouldn't the straws have filters for fish like cheese?
Yeah, like
But no, there's no fish filter.
yeah, it's like on the alien mothership, they like start a faucet and fish just come out of the faucet.
That's where they filter it.
like,
They just put down a big spaghetti strainer.
Yeah, there's a lot of fish in the water supply for these Yeerks.
yeah, this is the 90s, right?
Yeah.
Like,
This is actually when we go, because that's the end of their planning. And I actually don't think the planning evolves past that. It's a very
No,
big ship.
That's it. We're done. We got
They
it.
just have,
we
like-
killed it.
right. They came up with the premise for a meeting, but didn't do the work they were supposed to do in the meeting. It happens to small groups who are just learning to meet all the time. It just blows my mind because they literally, everything else they discussed, but then Jake says, we're going to be fish. It's like, who the fuck brought this guy? Like, there's so many ways they could get inside the ship.
The book has established how big this ship. Tobias has spent a lot of time talking about how big
Fleets
this ship is.
of buses you could suck
Fleets
up
of
with that
buses
scuba.
could be sucked up into that ship, and yet we can't fly into it.
Yeah,
I just
they don't have a map for the inside. They don't know if it's like tubes like Chuckie
Nope.
Cheese when
Nope.
they get
no, they
inside.
don't know. No,
They don't know
no,
what,
they
if
don't
there's
know.
a button for the cloaking
Oh my
device.
god! Oh my god! If they were just like a flopping school of fish in the tubes from Chuckie Cheese, that would be so good. Like, I'm just imagining a bunch of like, I don't know, like bass just like flailing and dying as they find their way to the slide.
Yeah, having
ahead.
made that plan, they go off to their other silly errands, whatever they're doing. Rachel's got a gymnastics meet. Cassie's gonna go tend to that electrocuted owl. Jake has homework. Tobias is just gonna fly around. And Marco, he's thinking about going to this gymnastics meet, you know?
he is.
And at the bottom of page 82, Jake says,
And trust me, Marco, if Rachel sees you at the mall making faces while she's on the balance beam, she will turn into an elephant and stomp you. Marco wins. Remember the good old days when all a girl could do to you was call you names?
It's so horrible.
I
It's
think
just
he's
so bad.
overcompensating.
he's been struck several times.
Yeah.
Tobias makes a comment then after he flies off. He says he has a lot of time on his hands and then says, no hands exactly, but lots of time.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think this chapter, I think they were trying to kill some time. I think they needed a few more pages because we get a lot of Tobias speculating about the things that he cannot do and then the things that he can do now that he's a bird. And so he can't play video games, which is a shame because he has amazing eyesight and reaction time. He reflects on things that happened in previous books, like Chapman, and the fact that Melissa's going to be at the gymnastics meet. Then he thinks about, like, he's sad because he can't go to the mall like he could when he was a human, but he can go to the amusement park and just perch on a ride and ride the roller coaster for free. It's very strange.
And concerts, he brings up concerts about how nobody could stop him. Like, and he's like, this is it. This is the positive thinking I need to be doing.
And then he's flying to the mountains, right? He is going to spy on the Yeerks for some more. And then
Riding
it just
those hot
happens.
thermals.
He eats a rat?
Yeah, he's just spacing out. He's just hanging out. And then he swoops down because he sees a rat and he's like, yeah, I know what to do with this. And he swoops down and then sudden flare.
Focus, I struck, and then in an incredible rush of excitement surged through me. I was ecstatic. Ecstatic! That's the only word for it. It was intense beyond anything I had ever experienced. It was cool beyond all coolness. Talons hit warm flesh, my razor claws squeezed. The rat squirmed in my grip. God, wow.
No, it's very vivid how he describes
But it was
He's like,
helpless.
yeah, not gonna let
Helpless.
anybody take this. Gonna eat this. This is great. great. And then he realizes what he's doing.
I hooded my wings around my kill, shielding it from any other predator that might try to steal it away. And then, no.
Yeah.
He says to himself in his head. And
K.
he fell
Applegate
back.
decides to use bolding.
Bolding. It's a new one. He realizes he's covered with blood and raw meat. And this is a really interesting moment that I picked up on, and I'm sure lots of people did. It says, "In my panic, I forgot what I was. I tried to run away, but I no longer had legs and feet to run with. I had killing talons, bloody talons. I fell in the dirt." He tries to run like a human, and his legs can't do it, so he just falls down. And the idea of sending the like human brain signals to the hawk body is just so bonkers to me.
And so Tobias, freaking out, flies. As he's already done at numerous points before, he goes to Rachel when he's in crisis. And where is Rachel? She's at the mall.
At the mall!
Doing her gymnastics meet.
He arrives at the mall, and he's ready to just fly fully into the door and just let it be over. Like, he's actually ready to end his life, and it's not... He describes himself as screaming in his little hawk screech. And he says he shot toward the door like he'd shot toward the rat, but he's not planning to stop. He says, "I would hit the glass at full speed, and maybe that would awaken me from this nightmare." But someone opens the door. A dark-haired, short guy, to be specific. We don't really get a lot of description on him, though. But it sounds like
it is Marco.
Might be Marco.
Yeah, Marco totally opened the door.
But how Marco knew to be there then, I've no idea.
I think it's probably luck. He probably looked up and went, "Hey, Tobias."
So he goes hurtling through the doors, and he's fine. He's actually almost disappointed, or more confused than anything, that he didn't get woken up from this terrible nightmare by a hard surface. And this is where we get the Gap, Express, the Body Shop.
The Body Shop. Easy Spirit. Mrs. Fields.
I didn't know Mrs. Fields had a store.
Me either.
But I'd love to
I think
go.
that must have been
Nothing
a
but
stand,
cookies.
right?
Yeah. Like an
They
Annie
have
Ann's or
cookie
something.
stand.
Yeah, probably.
Barnes & Noble, Benetton, I remember. But then after that, after finishing the list, he says, "A world I knew, a world where I belonged, places I had been, foods I had eaten, the world of human beings, the world
Zoom!
of capitalists." Yeah, Zoom! Yeah, it's really like, wow, I miss buying stuff.
What shops did K. Applegate miss here that really would have brought us straight back? I think Spencer's.
I'd have gone for Walden Books, personally.
Walden Books, yes, yeah.
KB Toys.
KB Toys.
Or like Babbage's.
Babbage's.
FAO.
Yeah.
FYE.
No, I'm just kidding. The
Bass Pro
massage
Shop,
chairs that were just
Oh,
there
yeah.
in the middle.
Yeah.
So Tobias zips past Rachel while she's, of course, on the balancing beam. She was just raising one leg, balancing on the other. As one does.
Oh my god.
He shoots straight ahead. I could still hit it. A blank wall where they were going to put up a new shop. I want to know what shop's going in.
But Rachel has realized it's him now. Of course, I would assume that if you knew a hawk who was a person and you saw a hawk in a mall, you might naturally conclude that that was the hawk that is a person.
Right.
And so she cries out, she's like, "Tobias, no!" And that actually, like, gets through to him for a second. He, like, flares his wings out and doesn't hit the wall directly with his face.
That's good.
And he starts flying toward the glass ceiling and then bounces down on top of Rachel somehow.
Yeah, he flies like 50 or 60 feet up and then falls straight back down onto Rachel. It's the weirdest description of a mall I think I've ever heard. There's like some sort of exposed
It's like an
balcony
atrium.
up top. Yeah, it's weird.
And then he, like, falls on her, and they manage to, like, make it look like she's just trying to throw him off of her.
Yeah. She catches him, right?
Yeah.
Which I think she should win top prize just for this. I don't know if that's...
Agreed, while balancing no less.
Yes. With
Well, she
one
falls
leg
off,
raised.
Which is what I do when I try and make any activity I'm engaging in more impressive to the other parties involved.
I think if I heard a gymnast having this conversation too, so she actually says to Tobias, I don't know how quiet she could have been. You have to get out of here. Tobias says to her in thought speech, I killed. You don't understand, Rachel. I'm lost. I killed. And she says, no, as long as you have me and the others, you aren't lost. Tobias. I think this is endangering their entire mission.
Yeah, because it says that people are like coming out trying to like shoo the bird off of her. And so I'm like, if I heard a teenager like, "You're my friend, Mr. Hawk," like, like
using the name of a missing child, which I think at this point
nobody
there are
knows
posters
yet.
Yeah, back in the 90s, you had to be gone for at least a year before we'd start looking.
Is Tobias on milk cartons? No, not yet. But
Gotta
eventually
be.
he will be.
Yeah, people are like throwing things at him, and even as he's trying to fly away, they're all trying to like catch him with their bare hands, which, if as
It's
a
a bad
note to
idea.
listeners, if you ever see a bird of prey, don't try to catch it with your bare hands.
He flies towards the skylight again. He screams, "The ecstasy of the hunt. Ecstasy!" again. Flies straight
Yes,
for
because
the
he says
glass.
he had killed and he had loved it.
Which we know, at least Rachel's also experienced. Rachel killed that first night in the Yeerk base under the high school, and she
That's
too
true.
loved
did.
it.
Yeah, she was all about it. You're absolutely
And she
right.
wasn't even a creature that has like an innate desire
I
for
need
murder.
to kill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tobias flies towards the skylight. Marco has a baseball, which I think should have been mentioned at the team meeting. If he has a baseball with him.
He's just,
Yeah,
it
he
would
should
have been like he should have been
throwing it
tossing
out. He
his
was throwing a
hand.
baseball
Yeah.
up and down. Yeah.
Chekhov's baseball.
Yeah, exactly.
We've never even heard that Marco plays baseball, but he expertly throws the baseball. First try, he throws at the
Yeah, with
skylight.
enough
Yeah,
power.
1 in a million shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just inches ahead of his beak, it says.
Well, here's the thing they don't tell you. He was aiming for Tobias.
Yeah. Yeah. He throws it and goes, "The ecstasy! The ecstasy!" And Tobias flies through the burst skylight.
Yeah, in that moment, he surrenders. He lets go of the person he once was. It says, "Tobias, a boy whose face I could no longer remember, no longer existed."
He's AWOL. He's a hawk now. There
He's
is
feeling
no
a lot
Tobias.
of shame.
No, he's feeling great. He's feeling super
At
happy.
night, the human inside him shows pictures of his friends to him.
Is that true?
Yes, he says, the
My
human in
human
my
head
head
would
would show me memories, pictures of human life, pictures of his friends. The human in my head was sad, lonely. Tobias is just living as a hawk. Tobias is
Yeah,
like,
he's out killing all the time.
I've done it
He's
once.
disassociated.
Yeah, he's totally done. He's like, I'm doing the hawk thing. It's clearly what my body wants me to do. And then he remembers another memory. One price cut Polly.
Oh, the love interest of the book.
I see why she didn't keep mentioning the name.
He's so torn between Rachel and price cut Polly.
He's like, I like Rachel for her optimism, but Price Cut Polly's a bird like me.
I think K.A. Applegate realized that she wanted this other hawk to be a symbol of Tobias's hawk side, but it was really hard for her to be a symbol when her name was Price Cut Polly. Like, Tobias can't be thinking, I really wanted to go join the other hawks and just live as an animal with Price Cut
I'm
Polly.
gonna go.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go.
she's
Yeah,
the only thing she's a symbol of is great deals.
it's true. So he's out there hawking away, hawking his wares.
Wearing his hawks.
And he thinks about his lady hawk friend, Price Cut Polly. He saw her down on a tree branch. She was watching a baby raccoon, preparing to love and nurture it.
Yeah, he flies up to where he last saw her, and he finds her, and she's, hanging out.
About to do a murder.
But then he notices a chase happening.
Fast movement in the woods. His train of thought here is he's seeing this chase happen, right? The predator moved on 2 legs also, but these legs were built for greater speed. It had blades growing from its arms. It used the blades to slash the bushes and weeds. It cleared its way through them like a lawnmower chopping down tall grass. Lawnmower? So what's happening there is that he's remembering this word from his human days, right?
Yeah. His internal
Not
monologue.
that he's like, what's a lawnmower?
Yeah, I think it's more like his hawk brain is going, wait, why did I think the word lawnmower? Wait a minute. Why am I thinking in words at all?
Yeah. And then he remembers salad shooter, which is what Marco calls them.
Right. And that's when he realizes this 2-legged prey being chased by some sort of blade-covered predator is, in fact, a human.
Which at first does nothing for him. At first he's like, humans, they're just prey.
He's like,
That's all
prey,
they
predator.
are.
If this is a predator for a human, then this is a natural occurrence.
Mm-hmm. It's like the
Yeah.
David versus Goliath Survivor season.
And then
He's a Goliath now.
he realizes that he can understand the vocalizations of the prey that he had chalked up to squealing, common of much prey, and that it was crying out for help, and that he knew it. So he helps. He says it's like everything shifted, and it was like opening your eyes from a dream. It was a human being, and this was a Hork-Bajir chasing it, and this had to be stopped because it was wrong, and he had to do something. And so he does what most people tell you to do in a self-defense scenario, and he goes for the eyes.
Yeah, it's true. He dives right down on a Hork-Bajir's well-guarded eyes and manages to help the person escape.
Yeah, to Sears.
And then we get this interesting thing where the Hork-Bajir is yelling after the human running away.
In a mix, yeah.
In a mix. And we see this when we see them...
In a mix of Hork-Bajir and English.
Yeah, and it
Which
says...
is confusing.
Strange combination of human and alien speech that they use when working with humans. And I just, like, can't understand why that would be.
Well, so I'm thinking Gur Gafrash must mean bring them. Unless, well...
Something like that.
This is a trilingual Yeerk.
Yeah.
It speaks Hork-Bajir, it speaks English, and it speaks... What is
Yeah,
Yeerk?
yeah.
I have no idea. Because Yeerk can't be that difficult of a language because the mouth has to be able to produce it, right? Like that. And so I was like, is that the problem? Like, are they not able to produce all the noises? But like, why would they use random English words? Are they just assuming that the human controllers can't understand? But there are Yeerks in their head. They have to be able to understand.
Yes, this is a very good point.
Yeah, Yeerk language is very troubling. I agree.
So, Tobias, I think we only get a paraphrase. He helps this human escape, and he does it by using thought speech. So he guides the human, which is a risk, right? Because he's guiding the human. And he saves the human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He does.
And we learned that in the next chapter when he goes back to Rachel's room after deciding he's human enough for another bird, you up, booty call thing, whatever it is.
Yeah, he realizes he is a member of the Animorphs. They're his friends, and he has to help fight the Yeerks for the Andalites. He sees the hawk watching him and feels like he's drawn to her, but he fights it. He comes back to himself, and he says, me, Tobias.
Rachel reads a book in bed, propped up by several pillows. I don't think that's good for her back.
No. Reading in bed is not good for you. As is evidenced by the fact that I will live forever and Eddie will be dead tomorrow. So
At the flutter on her glass, she starts, and I want to talk about this for totally un-podcast related reasons. Who has decided that the verb is now startle all the time? Like, you startle someone, you start in reaction. Like, that's what I was always taught. But now in books, it says she's startled in reaction. And I just, I thank you, K.A. Applegate, for getting it right. That's all I want to say.
Wait, she did. She doesn't startle. She starts, right?
She starts. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
that's
she
the
got it
correct
right.
thing to do. You startle someone. It's a transitive versus intransitive issue here.
It still doesn't sound to me like something a 12-year-old would say.
Yeah.
The book went flying. Also, I just don't believe that. Like this. No, I think this is a great entrance for Tobias. Tobias, Rachel says, more or less. Tobias says Riley. Pretty good.
It's
I
good.
Really speaks to it.
cringed.
What?
I cringed.
No,
That
this
was,
is not cringe.
No.
It's so cringe.
Overruled. Yeah, Rachel goes in to hug, but then Tobias says birds aren't exactly made for hugging, and I will fight that. I will hug any bird any day as long as it is okay with it.
And Tobias would be, you would think. I hope that after your pants comment, Miranda, I hope that Rachel or one of the Animorphs sews Tobias pants.
A little pair of pants. Wow.
Make him a little tuxedo.
Wow.
Yeah.
That hold his wings to him so he can't fly.
Yeah. So cute.
A little top
Get me
hat.
the straight jacket that looks like a tuxedo.
So they have a whole conversation about why Tobias is a human, which a point Rachel's been hitting again and again.
I lost control, I admitted. For the last couple days, I've been living as a hawk. All the way, like a hawk. I think I was starting to forget me. I was starting to lose touch with humans.
And then he tells her about the human he saw at the lake and saving him. And she's like, oh, that was kind of a risk to, like, thought speak to him. And he's like, I know, but, like, he already saw Hork Bajir. Like,
yeah. His cover's already blown. Yeah, it's like...
And Rachel's like, yeah, they'll either just think he's crazy, or if a Yeerk finds out about it, they'll just Yeerk him. So, like, it is what it is.
He really is in trouble. That guy is not having a good time. Like, that guy, yeah, he's like the homeless person in book 1. He's most assuredly dead already.
No, but so Rachel and Tobias have another conversation about what it means to be human, and they have a really nice little bonding moment where Rachel kind of gives him the scritches. They have, like, they're cute. It's cute.
Yeah, they do their little cute.
Yeah. They're gonna do the mission, though, which
it's true.
They had decided could only happen on a Saturday because they had to go camping.
Makes no fucking sense.
And so they run off to go camping. Tobias is leading them to this cave, and they're joking about all the creatures that go scurrying in and out of it, and Marco's like, oh great, we're gonna hang out with skunks. You know, he thinks I want to hang out where skunks live, and Tobias is like, oh, they don't live there, they just run from predators there. And then everybody has this moment of, like, awkward silence where they're like, oh,
you're what they're running
the
from,
predator.
Right? Yeah, okay.
We find out that Rachel made a little pouch that Tobias could carry that has a little watch in it.
Oh, really?
And some fishing hooks and some fishing line because they're gonna go fishing.
Tobias just keeps bringing up how he keeps track of time in this book. Like, it's been with, like, bank signs and things like that.
Yeah, and he makes comments about how weird it would be to see a hawk with a watch on. He's like, even if you had it, you couldn't wear it.
But it's important because he's been the one keeping track of how long they've been in Morph, too.
Why didn't we go fishing frickin' any other time? Like, why didn't,
Yeah, they're really pressed for time on this. They're like, we gotta catch a fish.
No one has a fish or in a fish tank or anything.
Yeah,
either.
it is kind of
doesn't...
weird. Jake says they need to gather firewood and puts his hands on his hips. He says it wouldn't hurt to warm that cave up a little before the Yeerks get here, and I just think that's big dad energy. Like, hands on the hips, deep sigh. We need to gather
his
firewood.
His hands are on his hips, but he's wearing bike shorts and a tight t-shirt.
That's
while
super
Cassie
big
and Rachel
dad
are
energy.
in
Do you have any
leotards.
idea?
Yeah. So the next 5 chapters are them catching the fish. It's very Proustian.
All right, let's turn into fish and get sucked up the straw.
Cassie catches a fish. Then they all transform into fish, right? Do you think their feelings about eating a specific animal change if they've morphed into that animal?
Are they, like, becoming more and more vegan?
There's also the opposite, though, because they turn into predators and they know about animals that have to eat to live.
Rachel's been talking about being a vegetarian. I think it only came up once.
I imagine Cassie already is.
I thought of this because Marco says, I mean, we could clean him and eat him with a little lemon juice, maybe some fries on the side. And then I started wondering.
I think Cassie, once she morphs, she makes a comment about having this fear, like she can just see an image of herself being dipped in tartar sauce.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tobias is like, I don't know if I like this plan. Like, I think it's taking too long. I'm really worried about it. You guys have never morphed this fish before. We're not going to have time to test it. And then Cassie's like, got a fish. And they're like, let's do it.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
So they're planning this morph, right? And Tobias is getting nervous and he doesn't like it and he's changing his mind. And Tobias goes up and he's thinking about it. He's like really not ragging on his friends, but he's like, people never think something bad's going to happen to them until it does. But he's like, obviously the bad thing happened to me, so I know it can happen, and I'm trying to convince them to be more careful. But then, as he's flying around, he sees Price Cut Polly. She's watching him, and this is really like the moment where he has the clearest juxtaposition of the two things, because his human life is inherently difficult because A, he's not a human, and B, life with the Animorphs is just difficult. And his life with her would be simple, but also would not contain any emotions that he is used to. He's like, she wanted me to fly down to her. He's like, I don't know how I knew she wanted that, but I did know.
Even when he says, like, one thing I knew for sure, I wasn't ready to settle down with anyone, especially not a hawk. even if the hawk part of his brain wants to pair up with this actual red-tailed hawk, Tobias, 12-year-old, knows that he's not ready for that kind of
Right,
commitment.
yeah, he's like, that's a big. And so he's like, nope, done with that, not doing it. I don't want to be in her territory anymore. And then he says, she confused me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does not sound right.
Trucks! Jeeps! That's how we change subjects. So Tobias doesn't have to deal with those emotions because now action is happening.
Right, the Yeerks are coming. He sees the park ranger controllers and all the people, and he runs back to his friends. There's helicopters. He's like, oh gosh, this is crazy. And he's like, my friends are trying to get back to cover, so I have to keep this helicopter from seeing them. And so for some reason, like, plays chicken with this helicopter to try to get it to avoid seeing them.
Makes no sense.
But he survives. And they make it into the cave. And he feels certain that if he hadn't done this, they would have seen Rachel. Because when he banks left and the helicopter banks right, he gets a clear view of Rachel. Still not in the cave. So, like, they would have been caught. And he's like, all right. And their plan now is to morph in the cave and have Tobias carry them to the lake.
It's so ridiculous. Like a hawk gently setting 4 fish down in a row in a lake.
It draws more attention to them than if they just turned into 5 different birds and flew. What does happen here is that Visser 3 shows up, right? This blade ship.
Yes.
Which I think he's overmanaging his underlings. Because all that happened was one human, their assumption is that one human, the one that Tobias saved, escaped. And that's the reason Visser 3 is here.
Multiple times throughout this, they describe the truck ship as being as big as a small moon. And I just leave the same note that says that's no moon every single time.
Yeah. So, if you're comparing a ship that you're planning to break into to a small moon, and your plan only is to find the cloaking device and turn it off, like, how long is that going? Like, I just don't understand where the gap is here, where they're not wondering, what if we can't find the cloaking device?
If it literally
how many
is the
floors
size
are
of,
there?
Yeah, if it's the size of a small moon, it's going to take an hour to swim across at least.
I mean, to clarify, if it was the size of a small moon, it would be having effects on the tides. But, like...
all the water stood straight up into Spire.
But why does she both want us to know, I mean, Kay Applegate, how big the ship is, but also not ask, how are they going to find the cloaking device? I don't understand how both can be true. But, you know what? We'll get there. We'll get there.
So at last we see those dainty Andalite hooves.
Let's just call it right now. Is Visser 3 one of their fathers? No, right? None of them are actually an Andalite trapped
Tobias's father. I think Tobias's father.
If it was going to be anyone, I feel like it would have to be Cassie, right? Because she's got the morphing
Could be Marco's
ability.
mom. Could be Marco's mom. She never turned back up.
Would it be a Yeerk and an Andalite trapped in a human body? Like the Russian nesting dolls are confusing to me at this point.
I was assuming it was an Andalite that had morphed a human, become Marco's mom, lived as Marco's mom, been called back to the fight, and then gotten yearked. Tobias runs back to everybody and is like, forget the plan. Visser 3 is here. And they're like, we're not forgetting the plan.
There's no hesitation, really.
Yeah, they ask why he's here, and he's like, I guess he's just overseeing it because they let that guy get away. And Marco says he's here to kick butt on his boys.
What? What? Where does it say that?
Page 121, beginning of chapter 21.
Oh my god, you're right.
Yeah,
They're here to kick butt on his boys.
I'm going to have to start saying that.
Tobias reiterates, as if there's any plan here. I really feel like she's just trying to convince us, the readers. The plan was for you to sneak down to the water, morph as soon as you got there, and head out for the ship's water intake pipe. I reminded that this is Tobias. It was always a dangerous plan. It is a dangerous plan because that's the extent of the plan. There's no plan once you get inside.
There's no plan.
The suction tubes.
And then he goes on. He says, it was always a dangerous plan, but now it's impossible. 4 of you walking down to the water, then morphing, that's not going to happen. Not as alert as these guys are now. Yeah. Should have accounted for that. They should already be... No, I agree 100%. Here's the thing that blows my mind is like, this is the denouement of the book. This is like the solution of having idiot Tobias boy, Hawk man, dragging fish.
So the other thing is that it's also, like, not even something that they planned for in any way. Like, they got totally lucky, because Cassie is the only one who goes, well, fish can survive a couple minutes out of water. And then, out of sheer luck, the fish they picked was small enough for Tobias to carry. And so they're like, okay, let's do it. And he's like, this is ridiculous. But somehow, this is what we end up doing.
So they morph into fish.
It's awful.
It's
Even
awful.
Cassie's is just awful. She manages to somehow morph her lungs like last, and then she starts kind of panicking. We do get her legless body fell to the ground, which is our all fours moment.
It's awful. It's just awful.
From her lower back, her body stretched out, elongated. Oh, Rachel cried. A tail had just spurted from Cassie's behind.
It is so rude to do that. I know it happens to everybody when something like that's happening, but to just go, oh, like Rachel, you gotta stifle it. It's not a good look.
Oh my
It's
god.
not.
When she's shrunk down, right about the time she develops gills, it says she was tiny now, less than a foot long. All that was left of her human body were two very tiny doll hands.
Oh.
And that's awful.
Became little fins.
Little fins!
Oh.
Go, Jake said. Jake not reading the room. He has not morphed into a fish yet.
And so off they went. He gets seen by a Hork-Bajir, but he doesn't think he gets, like, noticed as being weird. Which, like, 2 minutes ago, they were firing at a random deer. So, like, I don't know. And so he drops her in the water. She's like, that's cool. I'm underwater. And he's like, you sure are. She's like, whoa.
He, like, literally says, you sure are, right?
I think he does.
It's
Yeah,
like-
you sure
yeah,
are underwater.
So then he gets everyone. Everyone
he gets
except Rachel.
Jake,
Rachel's
no one
last,
notices
right?
him. Marco, no one notices him.
I looked away as Rachel began to get strange and hideous. Unbelievable.
It's
Unbelievable.
called
Beautiful
puberty.
friend.
As she's morphing, they hear some noise outside the cave. There's a line that says, I heard a sound like fast machetes.
Oh my god, like what? Shuk, 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 shuk.
All my Pokemon childhood brain keeps thinking it's Scyther.
It's
like
Scyther.
That's
It is
what
Scyther.
Hork-Bajir is.
Hork-Bajir's just Scyther. There
I
was the
know.
one that was made of metal.
Scissor, yeah. There was a scissor.
Yeah. So anyway, it's time to drag Rachel out as a half fish, half human.
She's
in
mostly
front of
fish.
but
Almost
in
entirely
front of-
fish.
and he just like wiggles this fish around in front of the Hork-Bajir and is like, are you hungry?
And then he's like, well, when I flew full force at a helicopter, it moved, so I guess maybe it'll work with these guys. And so he just charges at them. They move out of the way. The Hork-Bajir slashes at him. He tries to fly away. He's tired. And then they shoot a Dracon beam at him. They miss, but they hit the ship.
Unbelievable. Just unfucking
And I want to be
believable.
clear, I don't know how far away from the ship we are at this point, but what happens here is a small hole appears. Small hole.
yes.
Let's just put a pin in that. Drop Rachel in the water. They're swimming. He flies with them for a while so he can still thought speech with them, and then he lies about it for some reason.
Rachel did it, so why shouldn't Tobias, right?
How did he
Yeah.
lie?
He was supposed to fly up to the other side of the ship, but instead he stays just
Oh, I
under the
see.
ship to fly along the surface of the water so he can talk to them.
And then they start talking about how crazy their idea is while they're doing it, which is like classic them. It's like, excuse me, Marco says, does anyone else ever stop to realize that some of the things we talk about doing are totally insane? What? Turning into a fish so we can be carried by a hawk to let ourselves be sucked up by the pipe of an alien spaceship so that we can then turn into tigers and gorillas or whatever and overpower the creepy aliens, Rachel said. Is that what you mean by insane? That's it exactly.
Thank
Marco
you.
thought spoke.
Succinctly
Thank you.
put.
Thank you. Thank you for seeing me.
And then he's like, all right,
Yeah.
as long as we all acknowledge that, I feel heard, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
Yeah, so they swim up to the pipe, they get sucked up, and they're like, whoa! And I think he says it's like being sucked up by a giant, which is like a really weird thing to
Yeah,
say.
that makes no sense. Oh my
So
God.
Tobias is
There's tremendous
outside
suction.
waiting for his
So good.
friends, and he sees a Hork-Bajir get executed.
Oh, yeah, the Hork-Bajir that failed to kill the bird?
Yeah, he shot,
shot the
it's
ship.
actually just because he shot the ship.
He shot the ship.
Yeah.
Got it. And so, yeah, that Hork-Bajir gets singled out by Visser 3 and executed.
Yeah,
I'm
just
like imagining
killed.
that one shot, the ship is just leaking vital fluids or something.
And then after the execution, other people start to speak up and be like, hey, you know how right before you shot him, he was talking about a bird behaving strangely? I saw that too.
So he just starts shooting the rest of them for misperforming. I have to say, like, if that's that easy, it wasn't that guy's fault. Like, if shooting a ship like that is that easy, it's just like...
It was a design flaw.
So they mobilize the bug fighters, they mobilize the helicopters, they scramble the jets.
Looking for the weird bird,
Looking
right?
for the weird bird, and he's like, I don't know what to do. And then he realizes that if he's close enough to the ship, they won't fire. So he's like, oh.
This is nuts. They're looking for a bird. They're looking for a bird. It's not even a bird carrying a Draken beam, which will happen. But right now, it's just a bird.
It's just a bird.
Visser 3
just
got
a
into
bird.
his spaceship to hunt.
A bird. A fucking bird. You're right.
He notices that once again he is prey and they are predator. He's just standing on a ship, and the only reason they can't fire at him is because they'll damage the ship.
Yeah, it's just not, it's not good.
So Visser 3 comes up and, announces his intentions to kill the Andalite bandit, which he still thinks he is.
He's kind of holding the whole ship hostage.
Yeah.
Like, he's got his wing around the ship. He's like, don't shoot or the ship gets it.
While he's being harassed by Visser 3, saying, like, listen, if you give yourself up, I'll kill you quickly. If not, I'll wait until we get a better chance. While he's there, he hears thought speech from his friends, who tell him that their poorly thought out plan has failed. And they have swum up into this tank, and they cannot open the grate at the top. They are just stuck.
Unfucking real.
They turned into
Unfucking
humans
real.
to try to open it, and then she says her only wish, really, is that they don't want to be taken alive.
Yeah, it's like the end of Toy Story 3 when
they
they're
all
about to
hold
get
hands.
incinerated. Yeah, it's
But
unbelievable.
5 minutes ago, they were in the lake. They were fish.
Yeah.
They got sucked up, and immediately they realized their
And
plan
Marco
didn't...
was like, hey, last time, guys, last time. Like,
checking
okay?
in.
These kids, we're going to have a new set of 6 kids by book 6. I swear to God, they're just all going to
They
be dead.
think the suction tube led directly to the mainframe.
It like empties out into the bridge or something. Yeah, it's
We
like,
actually keep our emergency decloaking button in the tank. Because why would you want to hit it?
This is Star
Tobias-
Wars logic. It's not Star
Yes,
Trek.
well,
It is Star
speaking of
Wars
Star
logic.
Wars, he says, Rachel, I never told you. And she goes, you didn't have to, Tobias. I knew. Goodbye. And I think that's some very strong I love you, I know vibes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think we got a
definitely.
lot of Star Wars this last third of the book.
Above me, the blade ship waited like a hawk watching a rabbit, ready to swoop down and finish me. Only I wasn't a rabbit. Visser 3 was a predator? Well, so was I. Not sure that's how that works.
Yeah, he's like, I
But
had nothing to lose.
So Tobias is tasked right now with destroying the whole ship somehow.
Or at least destroying the part that they're in so they can't be tortured.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Extra points if you kill your friends.
The Taxxons have now crawled out of the ship onto the
apparently
ship.
they can be on the outsides of things. Yeah.
But if there's one thing that Tobias has learned, it is that eyes are the weak point of every creature.
Yeah. It's true.
He goes for the red jello eyes of a Taxxon and then manages to get hold of a Dracon beam in his talons.
Steals it out of the hand of a Taxxon.
And he still holds close to the ship so that they can't shoot him. He's flying just on just on the edge of a ship, holding a gun.
I could not save my friends, perhaps, but I could try and grant Rachel's last wish. I could try and bring the ship down. He's gonna kill her.
Yeah, he flies to where the bridge crew had been. All the while, they're in pursuit of him. And it tries to fly up and, force him into a stall, and he has to start, crawling up.
Oh my God, I
side.
forgot all about this.
For some reason, he imagines saying to Visser 3, guess what, creep? Not an Andalite at all. The name is Tobias. They include that, but then he doesn't do that. They keep their cover, which I feel like can't last many more books. There's
Not at this rate. They are way too eager to tell their secret.
So desperately, as he's finally there, flying full force at the windows of the bridge, he pulls back with one talon, firing the Dracon beam and shouting, "Fry, you worms!"
It's empowering.
He says there was no recoil, not like a regular gun at all, which is a little concerning.
Why does he know what that? Yeah.
yeah.
It burns a hole through the window, slices through a Taxxon, begins slicing up control panels and instruments. He squeezes it as long as he can. And this single beam slices through so much of the ship.
Yep.
Which they remind us is as big as a skyscraper.
And which, again, this beam, from some distance away, we don't know what, caused a small, inconsequential hole.
It was an incredible, terrible thing to see. The ship, big as a skyscraper, vast beyond belief, shuddered as though it had hit a speed bump. Still it rose sharply upward into the sky as if it were a whale breaching. It aimed for space, its natural home. It suddenly rolled onto its side. This is important, I feel like, that
Boom!
it can't.
And then it hits a helicopter.
One of the helicopters.
Which just explodes.
Crunch! Ba-boom!
And then he sees it, 100-foot-long tear in the side of the truck ship that just happens to be in that tank and didn't hit any of his friends. 700 feet up in the air over the forest, he sees his friends in human form falling.
Oh boy, he whispers.
He does!
And then he shouts, "No!" I knew there was nothing I could do. I knew it. But still, I hurtled after them, hurtled with all my speed to them as they fell. Arms flailing, mouths open, and screams of terror.
And I don't think they have any right to be surprised. That's what I would be saying to them.
They should be saying "we" right now. They should be like "we." They fell, but as they fell, they began to change.
That's right.
Into soon-to-be-dead people.
On their fall, they manage, and in some cases barely manage, to morph into their bird morphs, which they should have just been fucking using all along.
Agreed.
So then they fly. I mean, that's basically, they fly away, right? And the truck ship explodes.
They start shooting down any bird they can see.
Birds are the
Oh my
problem.
God.
That's when he sees it. Price cut Polly.
She
Taking
takes
off
the bullet for the team.
Yeah, to fly away. And, to them, they looked exactly the same. The Dracon beam sizzled. It burned off a wing. And she fell to earth, never to fly again.
And the book just ends there.
Yeah, because then it just moves on. It's just like, yep, truck ship, it burned. But they just disintegrated all the bits. There was no evidence. We couldn't show anybody anything. Nobody saw it.
Yeah, we just erase everything. Like someone walked into the writer's room and just started erasing the whiteboard. Like just none of this ever happened.
And then very sweetly, in a moment where Tobias goes to see Rachel, Rachel says that she and Cassie were thinking that maybe they could go and try and find his Hawk Love's body and, give her a proper burial. And she says she thinks it might sound crazy, and Tobias says, "No, that doesn't sound crazy, Rachel. Not crazy at all. Just human." And she looked
and then she's like,
keenly
"So
at him.
does that mean it's a bad thing?"
She says, "Well, we are all human." We are human. All of us. And he says he realized he was human when he was sad when she died, and that only a human would be sad that a hawk died. Another hawk might miss her a little, but sadness is truly a human emotion. And then Rachel again is like, "We could find her body. You have really good eyesight." And he's like, No. She will have been eaten by a raccoon or a wolf or another bird. Maybe even another hawk. That's the way it is.
Rachel says that's the way it is for wild animals, Tobias, about burial. And he says, "Yeah, I know. That's how I know that you are wrong, Rachel, at least partly. I am a human, but I'm also a hawk. I'm a predator who kills for food, and I'm also a human being who grieves over death." And I feel like that's his compromise of the book, is that he's learning to hold both, that he's both human and bird. Yeah.
And then he gets his little bit, and says, "I am Tobias, a boy, a hawk, some strange mix of the two. You know now why I can't tell you my last name or where I live. But someday you may look up in the sky and see the silhouette of a large bird of prey. Some large bird with a rending beak and sharp, tearing talons. Some bird with vast wings outstretched to ride the thermals. Be happy for me, and for all who fly free. Yeah.
This is my favorite book so far, I think, of the 3 we've read. I also feel like it went too big and too fast.
Yeah,
Is that
it's
Agreed.
like-
It's uncomprehendable.
It's the most
Yeah.
detailed and introspective and heart-wrenching and all these things. And then in the last, 50 pages, it just explodes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't dislike the ending of the book. It's just, really wild, really fast. Well, the whole
Yeah.
theme of this book really is Tobias existing
Yeah.
as a part of the group from outside the group. It's very much about being an outsider.
I feel like if this was a TV show released now, the first season would end with Tobias being trapped as a hawk. I think we'd get more time.
You think you get that much out of it?
Maybe not that much, but if you transform Tobias, if he's permanently a hawk, or at the end of the first episode, you're not really getting to know that character ever as
Yeah.
human, just as a hawk. So I don't feel like you get a sense of what
Yeah, that's
was
true.
lost.
So the little buzz thing for this book, apparently for the encounter, which we just finished book 3, is now you see them, now you don't. Makes no sense.
What is that
Makes
referring to?
no sense.
Also, what is the encounter? Which
what was the
encou-
encounter?
The truck ship or Price Cut Polly?
I think it's Price Cut
His
Polly.
encounter with a
that's good.
hawk?
If there's one thing we need to take forward from this book, I think it's Price Cut Polly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to be talking about her a lot in future
Yeah.
sessions. And I think,
What
yeah,
would Price
there's
Cut
a lot
Polly
there.
think about this?
Yeah. She'd probably be like, caw or something like, I don't know how hawk sounds. Sear! Sear! Sear!
Thanks for listening to Anidorks. We'll be back soon with lots more to say. Until the Andalites return, or at least until next time. See you soon!